Hello, y'all. Hello. Let me get my life together just a little bit. I'm always like pulling my music up after the fact, y'all. My bad. Let me get this going. That was loud. There we go. All right. How's everybody doing today? I'll give everybody a chance to come in. I actually am like lacking on some of my notes, so let me make sure I have these up here. Hello. Welcome in. Make sure to like the live. Hey, Rue, welcome in. Make sure to like the live. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If this is your first time, please drop in the comments where you found me and where you're watching from. We're talking about letting go today. And this is definitely a topic that I still struggle with from time to time. So again, like I say all the time, when I'm talking to y'all, I'm talking to myself. Okay? I'm talking to myself. So we'll go ahead and get started in just a few seconds here as I get adjusted. And there we go. I have, 7 affirmations today and a few talking points as to why we probably are struggling with letting go, releasing. And when it comes to letting go and releasing, I'm talking about not just people, but situations as well. So environments too, like just thinking about all of the things that are impacting our lives and what we need to hold on to and what we need to let go of. So it's not just going to be in relation to people. It's going to be just more than that. I'm going to turn this down a bit. So let me make sure that I don't have anything missing here. But how are you guys today? Hope all is well. I hope your Monday went well. Okay, and then so let's dive into it. Letting go, releasing. As we're talking through this, I want us all to really think about like what are some things in our lives that we have yet to let go of and need to let go, but also like thinking about past situations and things that you let go of that in hindsight you were like, oh, that was a good idea. Like, I'm glad I did that. Because a lot of times when it comes to moving forward and letting go, we have to resort back to past experiences where it's worked. So take that into consideration too. It's not always about, letting go. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out my chargers here. It's not always about, letting go of the now, but also just reminiscing and thinking through those times where you did let go and it actually was a benefit to you. So we're diving into the points here. Why is letting go a struggle, right? Why do we struggle with it so much to the point where it's detrimental to our, whether it be our everyday life, our work life, our home life, our personal life, our relationships? Why is it such a struggle? One of the first points that I want to make really relevant is that we become obsessed with finding closure when it comes to situations. So instead of us like taking the time to find or create our own closure, we are get obsessed over the thought of getting that closure from the other person or from the situation. And a lot of times though that closure will never come. So we try to hold on to it, whether it be we hold on to the emotions surrounding it, we hold on to whatever we can grab to try to hold on to it until we get that closure. And like I said, it's not always going to come. You're not always going to get the closure that you're looking for. So just making sure to think through that and understand that. Hi, is it the toning queen? If I'm reading that right. Hello, welcome in, welcome in. So that's the point number one. Try to release the obsession of finding closure because it's not always going to come. Because at the end of the day, and this may hurt y'all, but at the end of the day, not everyone that hurt you, not every situation that has hurt you cares, right? So if you are in a situation or if you are in a relationship with someone, regardless if it's platonic or not, not all of the time will they care that they hurt you, right? So in that sense, you're not going to get the closure that you're actually looking for. Sometimes we hold on because we're looking for apologies. Sometimes we hold on because we're wanting to, make sure we're proving ourselves or make sure that they understand us. And sometimes people are committed to misunderstanding us. Sometimes people just don't care. So we are holding on to the, oh, if they would just apologize, or oh, if they would just do this, or oh, if they would just do that, that would give me closure and that would allow me to walk away. And that is not always going to come. So instead of focusing your energy on the closure and that person giving you closure, because the only thing you can control is yourself, right? You can't control the other person. And waiting around for that closure and begging for closure and all, like, that takes up too much energy. It takes up so much time. And the time that we spend investing in that, we could be spending elsewhere, and time and energy. So if we shift our mindset to how can I create closure for myself versus this other person or this thing creating closure for me, that takes your power back in the situation and it allows you to let go and release and move on. And then also to just thinking about choosing and picking your battles. If if this is a situation where you're not going to be able to control anything within it, you can't control the other person, like just let the battle go and let chips fall where they lay. Okay. So that's point number one, just making sure to not be obsessed with the aspect of closure. The point number two, understanding and separating the differences between facts and perceptions, facts and your truth, right? Because sometimes we have a hard time letting go because we're confusing truths and our personal truths and our own personal perceptions with facts. And just because something is a fact, just because something is a truth or your own perception doesn't make it a fact or reality. So understanding that there is a difference and taking the time to explore that and think through that, journal that, really kind of putting things into perspective. So that way you're not holding on to things based off of a false reality. So I'll give an example. So when it comes to, like, if you are in relationship with a friend and your friend, called you, or you called your friend, you kept calling your friend over and over and over and over again and over again, and they weren't answering, they weren't getting back to you or whatever. Your truth, your perception is that, oh, they're dismissing me, or, oh, they're not listening, they're not, answering my calls, they don't want to talk to me, there's an issue, there's a problem, we haven't talked in a couple of weeks. And, this is your truth. This is your perception. This is what you are thinking is happening, right? But on the other side, your friend maybe had a death in the family and they didn't want to tell anyone, and they went through a whole spiral of depression, and they weren't answering their phone, and they just had so many things going on, and they just couldn't even bring up or muster up the energy to have a conversation with any friends, with any family, right? To you, it's a truth, right? It's a truth that they didn't answer your call. It's a truth that they probably were ignoring you. It's a truth that they weren't themselves, right? And it's not what you're used to, right? So those are all truths. Those are all your own perception. That's true to you. But in reality, they were depressed. They were going through a depression. They were going through a very difficult situation where they were grieving and all of these things. So even though on your side, there was a truth and there's a perception of what happened, on their side, it looks totally different. So like understanding that truth and perceptions and facts are not one and the same. And being able to separate the two is really, really important. And that's how you're able to create closure, for one. Like, so if it's a friendship that you kind of just broke things off and it just didn't work out, maybe it will kind of be a seasonal thing and they'll come back around. Or it gives you a space to be able to reconcile with that person and to smooth things over and have a conversation. So just understanding that those truths and perceptions can very well be detrimental when it comes to, having to let go and releasing things, and really thinking through those things. What is fact and what is my own truth and my own perception is key to like digesting and moving through that. And what is my other point? The last point is, basically, when it comes to rejection, and I always think of it this way, rejection is God's protection, right? Anytime that I have some type of rejection in my life, whether it be within relationships, whether it be within career, whether it be, anything that I'm dealing with, rejection is God's protection. And there's a reason behind that rejection coming my way, and it's a form of protecting me, or it's a form of pivoting me to where I'm supposed to be because I wasn't where I was supposed to be. So I think that was the last point I have. Yes, I think the only other thing I would say is, like, if you feel like you have to force situations or force relationships or force things in general, that's typically a sign that it's something that you have to let go. Because when you're forcing things, when you're pressing things, when you're in a state of, oh, this has to work, and you're in a desperation of trying to force something, a lot of times at that point, you're attached to the outcome versus and the outcome that you can control, right? You're attached to the control of the outcome versus the actual outcome being what it should be. And what it should be is not always what we want it to be. I hope that makes sense. Like, we're always trying to like force these things to happen, or force these relationships, or force ourselves into someone's lives just because they've always been there. And when you find yourself trying to force things over and over and over again, it's exhausting. It drains your energy. It gets you to a point where you're just totally burned out and exhausted, and then you're wondering why. Thank you. Hi, Dr. Roxanne Richards. Welcome in. So just thinking through all of that. So the points I just made is going back through the reason why letting go is a struggle is, one, we're obsessed with finding closure. Number two, we're having a hard time separating facts between truth and perception. Number three is rejection is usually God's protection. That was number three. Rejection is usually God's protection, and we're trying too much to force things. We're trying too much to force things in situations. So those are the 3 points. So we're going to dive into affirmations. I have 7 affirmations tonight on letting go and releasing. Feel free to use these affirmations however you wish to. If you want to write them down, if you want to journal them, that's perfectly okay. I put mine on sticky notes typically and just kind of post them around wherever I need them. I even have like some on my, laptop or whatever for work. If you want to change any of the language, if something doesn't resonate with you when it comes to the way that it's worded, feel free to change that too. And if you have any questions, this is very interactive. Feel free to let me know. Okay. Number one, let me just get this here. Yeah, number one, the first affirmation is I let go of the past and embrace the present moment with peace. I let go of the past and embrace the present moment with peace. And again, I let go of the past and embrace the present moment with peace. So how do you start letting go of situations and people? It starts with grieving that person or situation. And when I say grieving, it's not necessarily like grief of someone died, but sometimes when it comes to letting go, the process of letting go is kind of that same thought process, right? Where I have to go through all of these stages. And you may not go through all of the stages when it comes to certain situations, but when I have to go through these stages of feeling the emotions that I'm feeling when it comes to that particular situation or person or relationship, and go through that process so that way I can go on the journey to acceptance. And the faster you're able to get to acceptance, the faster you'll be able to release and let go, right? So I let go of the past and embrace the present moment with peace is finding a way for you to accept what's happening and being able to replace that with peaceful thoughts, with peaceful, putting yourself in peaceful environments and really thinking through how you can do that and allowing yourself to process the emotions. So that's really what that is. I don't think that when people think about letting go, that it's actually a process of grief, but it is. Like I grieved my job when I was laid off. I grieved that. And that was a process of denial, of anger, of bargaining, of depression, of acceptance, right? So those are the stages of grief. So thinking through those stages, right? At the first, when you think about just certain situations, say you have a friendship and they start acting different, just like I was talking about earlier. The first thing is denial. You're like, nah, that's not what it is. Like maybe they're doing this or maybe they're going through this or, let's give them a chance. Let's give them some time, right? And then it shifts to anger. Now it's happened for a long period of time. Now you're mad. Okay. Now you're angry. Now you're going through those emotions and the feelings and the anger. We talked about this on our anger live. Like a lot of times anger is a secondary emotion. Usually anger is attached to something else. So you may be angry because you're really hurt, or you may be angry because you're embarrassed, or you may be angry because you just felt rejected, right? So you're going to go through that anger, and then you go to bargaining where you're trying to figure it out and you're trying to make it work and you're trying to fix things as you're trying to be that fixer, right? The forcing, right? When I was talking about that earlier, you're trying to force things. And then it's depression, of an overwhelming feeling of sadness that you're feeling or having to process. And usually when we get to this point, this is where a lot of times it stops, where we just continue in this depression and sadness, and it kind of goes into this cycle where we're never able to get to acceptance. And instead of depression moving to acceptance, it's now depression moving into resentment, or moving into bitterness, or moving into that prolonged anger, right? So taking the time to understand, like, oh, I actually have to go through the process of grieving so that way I can get to acceptance, and then that way I can let and release everything, So sometimes acceptance is forgiveness. Sometimes acceptance looks like gratitude. Sometimes acceptance looks like just a contentment and peace with where you are. So acceptance can look different depending on the situation, or whether it's a relationship or if it's a actual certain situation or career or job or whatever. It can look different, but understanding that there is a process and you have to allow yourself to go through that process in order to let go. Sometimes we stop at denial. Sometimes we stop at anger and we just angry all the time and don't understand or know why we're angry. You know what I mean? Sometimes we stop at bargaining, where we're still trying to force things over and over and over again, and trying to negotiate and trying to compromise things and all of those things. So really thinking through, now that you have, those stages, thinking about situations or people that you're trying to let go, and determine what stage you're in, and from there you can make a decision on, okay, what do I need to go do next? I need to go through that depression or sadness, so that way I can release it and let it go. I need to feel whatever the feelings I need to feel, so that way it will pass. And so I know that was number one, y'all. I went on a tangent, but that I really wanted to hit home with that, because I don't think that we think about letting go as a process versus it just be, oh, it's something I pick up and I drop. So that's number one. Number two, I release the need to have all the answers and trust that clarity will come in time. I release the need to have all of the answers and trust that clarity will come in time. If you haven't liked the live, make sure to like the live, subscribe if you haven't already. I said that twice, or three times. I release the need to have all of the answers and trust that clarity will come in time. So we sometimes just have a hard time letting go because we want to feel needed, right? We want to feel needed in a particular situation. We like being the resource for people. We like being the resource for our bosses, or we like being the resource for our friends. And when we feel, or for our partners, and when we feel like we're no longer needed, that brings a void of, usually it's just a feeling of hopelessness sometimes, or it's a feeling of, I tried to help, and they're not accepting my help. So like, now what is my value? Like, our value is attached to that relationship or situation. And that sometimes, a lot of times, happens with jobs, but even too with romantic relationships. If we feel like we've been in a relationship for a long time, and now this person seems like, or it feels like, or we perceive that they don't need us anymore, that is a hard pill to swallow for people who are people pleasers. I say that as a people pleaser, okay? So I'm not just coming down on y'all, I'm preaching to myself, okay? So if you find yourself being one of those individuals where you're a people pleaser, that may be why it's hard for you to let go, because you want to continue to be the resource for that person. You want to continue to be the person that they need. And I'm sorry to say it, y'all, but that's a form of control. So because we have that feeling of wanting to be needed, it's hard for us to let go. So that's what this affirmation is for. I release the need to have all of the answers. You don't have all the answers, Sway. I had to say that. Yeah, you have to let go of all of the need to have all of the answers, and trust that clarity will come in time. Right? Trust that that clarity will come without you being the source or the resource. So that was number two. Number three, I let go of the need to be understood and embrace understanding of self. I let go of the need to be understood and embrace understanding of self. So sometimes we just want to be understood. Sometimes we just want to prove ourselves to others. right? And this is why we hold on. We just want to be understood. We just want them to hear us. We just want them to understand us. And we have to take into consideration when it comes to individuals and having relationships with people. Sometimes people are just committed to not understanding. They're committed and really committed to not seeing you for the way that you see yourself. And if you have a high regard for yourself, which we all should have a high regard for ourselves, um, then some people just don't want to see that. And that's okay. And allow them to be able to be that and to do that without it impacting you. Now, if it's someone that you truly are close to, right? If this is a family member, right? A lot of times we get into situations where, where we have these relationships with people just because they're blood, and we know for a fact that they're committed to misunderstanding us. And we try to force those relationships because of the fact that they're family. Like, sometimes you just have to let those things go and understand that people are going to be who they are. And as long as they, allow them to show you who they are, and then based off of what they show you, you take into your mind, okay, based off of what they showed me, this isn't something that I want to be attached to, right? Thinking about your values, thinking about your needs, thinking about your, what the purpose that you have for your life. And if this person is showing you to be this type of person, and this isn't someone that you want a part of your life, then that's someone that you have to let go and be okay with it. And it don't have to be animosity. It don't have to be, it don't have to be that you won't be around them at all. It doesn't mean that you have to be mean. You can still be kind, in those situations, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have access. And you have to think about too, what does access look like, right? Not if you think about all of these subscriptions we have, you have to pay for full access. Like, you're not going to get a subscription and get full access without there being tiers, without there being payment plans, right? So I think a lot of times it's hard for us to let go because we're giving full access to everybody. And not everybody deserves full access. So take into consideration, I might have dived into one of my other affirmations, but taking into consideration that you're not going to be understood by everybody. Not everybody's going to like you. Not all situations are going to be the best situations. Not all situations and opportunities are for you, right? And everything has its seasons. Everything has its purpose. And all of those seasons and purpose are not lifetime seasons and purposes. So just take that into consideration when you're thinking about the situations that you're in and the relationships that you're in. A lot of times these relationships were served what they were meant to be. And a lot of times we have a hard time processing and moving on because we think that it's supposed to be a forever season, and it's fall. It was just a situation for fall. It was not a forever season. So thinking through that, understanding that, and having that kind of mindset will help you to let go quickly, especially when it comes to people, whether it be people in your personal life or even just in career. I've learned in my career that not everybody's your friend. Just because you work with them every day, you spend a lot of time with them, and just because you are, cool in the workplace, outside of the workplace is a whole and totally different thing. And that's something I had to learn because I was giving full access to everybody. And just keeping that in mind when it's okay to use discretion when it comes to meeting new people, going into new environments. And it's okay to protect yourself, not in a defense type of the defense type of way, but more of a discernment. Just being able to discern your environment and being able to discern the people around you, right? So that was what number was that? That was number 3. I let go of the need to be understood and embrace understanding of self. Number 4, I release the need to control outcomes and trust the flow of life. I release the need to control outcomes and trust the flow of life. I release the need to control outcomes and trust the flow of life. So again, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but being able to release the need to control outcomes. A lot of times that's why we're having a hard time releasing. We can't control the outcomes of things. We just can't. And that's something that we have to accept. And if an outcome, sometimes we're having a hard time letting go just because of the feeling of inconvenience, right? Like this is really inconvenient right now that I'm going through this. So this is really inconvenient that you're acting like this, right? But we have to understand that everyone is the main character in their own story, right? And when it comes to situations, it's not a picture book, right? We're not able to control the story. All we can do is understand that we're just a part of the story and we're not necessarily the main character in every story, right? In this person's life, they're the main character. In this person's life, they're the main character. So we have a whole bunch of main characters walking around trying to make sense out of life and purpose. And when it comes to control of outcomes and how that relates to outcomes, everybody has in their mind the story of the outcome. So everybody's going to be working against each other's story, trying to come up with their own outcome. If you allow yourself to just embrace what's happening and be present in the moment and allow things to happen the way that they're going to happen and allow chips to fall where they fall, you'll spend a lot less time and energy on focusing on outcomes and give yourself more contentment and peace with where you are in the moment. So understanding that we have to release the need to control the outcomes. Now, granted, doesn't mean that you don't work, doesn't mean that you don't go for your goals, doesn't mean that you can't manifest and work towards things. Absolutely. But a lot of times we have in our minds how it's supposed to happen. And if it doesn't happen exactly that way, it takes us completely off track. Whereas you have to understand that in order for you to hit a goal, there's not one way to hitting that goal. There are many other ways to hitting that goal. And sometimes when we have this one way in our heads and that way doesn't work, we give up or we get frustrated. Don't mind my nails, y'all. I gotta redo them. But we get so flustered over an outcome that didn't work the way that we thought it was going to work, and because of that we plateau, and it's hard for us to let that situation go, and we stay in the grieving process longer than we probably should. Whereas if we processed it and let that go and just come up with with plan B, with plan C, with plan D, and still go towards it, then we could have spent all of that energy on that versus spending all of that time and energy on grieving and going into cycles of, oh my gosh, why did this happen to me? And complaining and all of that. So, understanding that we have to release the control of outcomes in order for us to experience true acceptance and truly releasing and letting go of things, so that way you make space and energy for the things that matter. That was number 4. Number 5, I am free. There's 7, guys. So 5, I am free from the weight of old habits, patterns, and limitations. I am free from the weight of old habits, patterns, and limitations. I am free from the weight of old habits, patterns, and limitations. Sometimes it's hard for us to let go because we're holding on to bad habits. We're holding on to the way that we we used to do things because of our trauma, because of our background, because of where we come from, and our core beliefs and what we believe about ourselves is based off of those experiences. And when most of our experiences in our past are difficult or traumatic or frustrating or just hard to digest, we result to those old habits of how we interact with people or interact with situations. And sometimes when things get so overwhelming, we just go back to what we know versus us shifting our mindsets and doing the work on ourselves in those moments, especially those in the moment things that are happening. So just understanding that you have to free yourself of that weight of the trauma. So that way you can free yourself of the cycles that are attached to that trauma. That way you can free yourself of those old habits that you used to result back to in result of that trauma. And that will make it easier for you to come to acceptance and release and let go of the things, including those things from the past. Okay. That was number 5. Number 6, I forgive myself and others, freeing myself from resentment and disappointment. I forgive myself and others, freeing myself from resentment and disappointment. I forgive myself and others, freeing myself from resentment and disappointment. Understand that forgiveness doesn't equal access, it doesn't equal trust, and it doesn't equal reconciliation. So when I say forgiveness, I know that forgiveness saying that word automatically just makes people just like, turn it off. I don't even want to hear no more. But forgiveness does not equal access. So that means it doesn't equal that it doesn't equate to that person having access to you. It doesn't equal trust. So it doesn't automatically mean that you 100% trust them all over again and you're just going to forget, what they did. And it doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't even mean that you have to reconcile, right? It doesn't mean that you have to go to them and demand an apology and then you have to be best friends again. It doesn't mean that, right? So understand that about forgiveness. But in order for you to get to acceptance, depending on the situation or the person, you may have to go through a process of forgiveness, okay? So understanding that going through that process allows yourself to be free from resentment, bitterness, and that continued disappointment, right? A lot of times we're still wrapped up in resentment and bitterness and disappointment because we haven't forgiven. And again, that doesn't mean access. It doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I let go of this situation. I let go of this person, right? And the way that you're able to do that a lot of times is to create distance, okay? A lot of times it's hard to forgive people when they're in your face. Okay, so there's sometimes you may have to create distance so that way it brings more perspective. And then from there, you can go through that grieving process that we talked about earlier and then come to forgiveness and come to acceptance. And forgiveness is just 100% letting go of the situation or the person and making sure to not allow that to penetrate your heart, your mind, and your spirit. A lot of times forgiveness is hard because we do the instant replay, right? So forgiveness is stopping the instant replay when it's happening. Sometimes we entertain it. We entertain that instant replay like, yeah, they did this, they did that, they did this, and then this happened, and then you just keep playing it over and over and over and over again, and it brings back the emotion over and over and over and over again. Forgiveness starts with stopping the instant replay. It starts with stop talking about it, because a lot of times when we talk about the situation with other people, that does the same thing. You're bringing back up the emotion. You're bringing back up the replay in your head so that way you can tell the person that you're talking to. So one thing I've learned is stopping the replay. You have the power and control to do that. And then also stop talking about it. Stop talking about them. Stop talking about the situation and allow yourself to process it internally versus outwardly. That was number 6. And then lastly, number 7, I trust that letting go will open doors to new opportunities and growth. I trust that letting go will open doors to new opportunities and growth. I trust that letting go will open doors to new opportunities and growth. So understanding that if you, again, going back to rejection is protection. If you hold on to these things longer than you're supposed to hold on to them, it doesn't give you the opportunity to have growth, right? And it doesn't give you the opportunity to open new doors or have new doors open for you, right? So if you are full or filled with a whole bunch of stuff that is draining your energy, it's hard for you to put the energy into purpose. It's hard for you to put your energy into where you're supposed to be, right? So if you were supposed to say I had $1 million in my hand, and I came up to you and you had a whole bunch of stuff in your arms, right? And you just had all this stuff in your arms. And I'm like, hey, I want to give you this $1 million. It's right here. But I need you to, I need your hands. Like, I need for you to, you can't take it if your hands are full. I bet you any amount of money you would drop all the stuff in your hands on the ground so that way you can grab that $1 million, right? We have to think about that spiritually, right? If we have all of these negative and hard and difficult emotions bottled up in us, it's going to be very hard for us to accept the positive ones, right? So if we have anger, if we have resentment, if we have hurt, if we have pain, if we have all of these frustration and confusion, if we have all of this bottled up within ourselves, how can peace come in? How can joy come in? How can any of those positive emotions come in if we have all of these negative emotions taking up so much space? So allowing yourself to let go of these situations makes room for peace, makes room for joy, makes room for excitement, right? It makes room for all of those things. So taking that into consideration when you're thinking about things that you have to let go, like, hey, if I'm not letting go of this resentment that I have for this person, how much joy am I giving up by holding on to this? If I am holding on to this sadness that I'm holding on in regards to this job, how much excitement am I giving up in my life? And when you present it to yourself that way, then you're like, all right, listen, it's not even worth it. I want my joy. I want my peace. I want my excitement. I want my love. I want all of those things. And if I can't have it, why? What's in the way? What's blocking it? So I hope this was helpful, y'all. That was the 7 affirmations. I'll go back to the top and read back through them really quickly. Number 1 was I let go of the past and embrace the present moment with peace. Number 2, I release the need to have all the answers and trust that clarity will come in time. Number 3, I let go of the need to be understood and embrace understanding of self. Number 4, I release the need to control outcomes and trust the flow of life. Number 5, I am free from the weight of old habits, patterns, and limitations. Number 6, I forgive myself and others, freeing myself from resentment and disappointment. Number 7, I trust that letting go will open doors to new opportunities and growth. I hope this was helpful, y'all. If this is your first time, my name is Debbie. I'm a certified mindfulness coach. And this channel is all things mindfulness and meditations. We just had a meditation posted yesterday, I believe, on procrastination. So make sure to check that out. And then the letting go meditation that's associated with this live will be posted this weekend. So I'm excited. We do this every Monday. Next week, I don't know what the topic will be, but I will post the topics usually on Saturdays so that way everybody can vote in the poll. So look out for that in the community section. And until next time, y'all all have a great rest of your night and have a mindful week. Thank you. Bye.